Good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to Behind the Curtain. I'm Sandy Robbins. I'm the producing artistic director of Delaware's Resident Ensemble Players, the professional resident theater company in residence at the University of Delaware. And I am honored today to be able to interview our guest, Susan Stroman.
Hello.
Stro, as she is known within the business, is a native Delawarean, having grown up in Wilmington and danced her way through a number of local studios and community theater productions. And she's also a blue hen, having graduated from the University of Delaware in 1976 and returning in 2005 to receive an honorary doctorate from the university. After graduation, Stro moved to New York City, and through grit, ingenuity, enthusiasm, and enormous talent, began an overwhelmingly successful career in the theater by any standard. She is a 5-time Tony Award-winning director and choreographer. Additionally, her work has been honored with an Olivier, a Drama Desk, the Outer Critics Circle, the Lucille Lortel, and a record 5 Astaire Awards. I suppose that you're best known for having directed and choreographed The Producers, which has the distinction of being the winner of a record-making 12 Tony Awards, including Best Direction and Best Choreographer. And she also co-created, directed, and choreographed the Tony Award-winning musical Contact for Lincoln Center, which was also honored for a 2003 Emmy Award for Live from Lincoln Center. And then she directed and choreographed the critically acclaimed musical The Scottsboro Boys on Broadway and in the West End, one of the best things I've ever seen in the theater or anywhere. And it was honored in London with the 2014 Evening Standard Award. Other Broadway credits include Oklahoma, Showboat, Prince of Broadway, Bullets Over Broadway, Big Fish, Young Frankenstein, Thou Shalt Not, The Music Man, The Frogs, Big, Steel Pier, Picnic, and Crazy for You. Now, if I read them all, there's going to be no time to interview you. So people should just know that there's no award in our industry that this extraordinary woman hasn't won, and that she directed and choreographed the movie, The Producers, the movie musical, for which it was nominated for 4 Golden Globes. She's an associate director at Lincoln Center, a member of the board of directors of the Ronald O. Perelman Center for the Performing Arts, located at the World Trade Center, and is a recipient of the George Abbott Award for Lifetime Achievement in the American Theater. Here at UD, Stro generously funds the Susan P. Stroman Visiting Playwright Series, which allows us to bring onto campus a visiting playwright each semester to the university. And this visiting playwright works with students and faculty and the community engaging together, and it enables the College of Arts and Sciences to further strengthen the art of both the written and performed world on campus. So, as I say, I could go on because there are more awards I didn't mention, but then we wouldn't have any time to talk. We can't, normally I'd say, please join me in welcoming Susan Stroman, but in this medium, we should a warm digital welcome to our guest. Hello, Stro. It's great to have you.
Thank you for that introduction. That is amazing, Sandy. Thank you so much, and I am thrilled to be here. Really thrilled.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. I've got more questions than we could possibly have time for, but let me. And people have sent some in, Stro, and I'll certainly make sure that we include those. So tell us about growing up in Delaware, how you became involved in dance and choreography, and how that whet your appetite for the life you now lead in the professional theater.
Well, I had a wonderful childhood in Delaware growing up. My father was an incredible piano player, and he would play all different styles of music. So I was that little girl that would dance around the living room to her father playing the piano. So music was very much a part of my life, very, very young. And I would create dances to his music. And that's really like when I was 6, 7, 8, that's when it really started. And, but my folks put me into dancing school. I started at Anna Marie Leo's studio. And then I went to a Delaware dance studio, and then I went to James Jameson Academy of Dance in Wilmington, which was wonderful. And I started to do community theater in the area for candlelight theater, and I was a member of the Brandywiners, that we would do shows in Longwood Gardens, which I loved. That there was a water curtain, and that was like a fantasy. So I was very, very involved. But I have to say, it was all to be on the other side of the table to create.
And you knew that from an early age, that you were not strictly interested in performing. You wanted to be
yes. Yeah. I mean, I started to choreograph a lot of shows in the community theaters around, and even, you know, in high school, at John Dickinson High School, doing the halftime show, you know. So I was all about creating for the theater. And when after I graduated from the university, you know, because we did not have when I was there, we did not certainly have the theater department that is there now, a wonderful theater department now. It was very small, so I graduated as an English major, but certainly took all the theater courses, but it was mostly about literature and the classics, and, you know, I was playing Lady Macbeth, you know. So, but I just loved the idea of creating, you know, getting a bunch of kids at the end of the block to put on a show or whatever. And but one day I decided I would go up to New York. This is right after I graduated, to audition and see what it would be like. And I drove up to New York, and I went to an audition for a place called the Goodspeed Opera House.
Oh, wow.
And there must have been, you know, 400 girls there.
I'm sure.
And I went to a non-equity call. I didn't quite know what that was. And they chose one girl, and it was me in the non-equity.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I was heading up to the Goodspeed Opera House to sing and dance. And
now, let me just interrupt to let everybody know, in case they don't. Goodspeed Opera is one of the most eminent, most important, most innovative producers of musicals outside of New York City in the entire country.
Yeah.
Do go on.
And they do old musicals. They preserve old musicals. Actually, they do new ones, like like Annie came from there, you know. So anyway, so I, you know, sold my car and went and got something called an equity card. And you know, I'll never forget, I was sitting down on the first day, and a fellow turned to me and said, "So how long have you been in the business?" And I said, 5 minutes. And we stayed friends for all these years. But so I started there, and then I went and did the audition for the national tour of Chicago with Gwen Verdon and Chita Rivera and Jerry Orbach. And it was for a year. I played the Hunyak, but I was able to take acting classes from Jerry Orbach the whole year. And, you know, and then I came back and did a Broadway show called Whoopee, which was a big tap dancing show. But I always wanted to, you know, it was almost that I was trying to assess the situation in New York to become a director and choreographer. I couldn't, you know, I just couldn't come to New York and take over. But I came as a song and dance gal because I could sing and dance. But nothing makes me happier than watching something I've created or been part of creating with a team, and to sit back and see how it affects an audience, you know, to sit in the back of a theater and you know, to see, like in Crazy Few, to see people put their arms around one another, or like producers, to see people laugh and fall into the aisles, or something like the Scottsboro Boys, you know, where it's something that they now talk about for weeks and weeks, a piece of theater that starts a conversation. So at the good, you know, I am a storyteller, and I feel quite fortunate that I get to tell stories through music and dance, but also diverse stories, you
Yes.
know, something as sensual and profound as Contact, or as funny as Young Frankenstein, or as deep and emotional as The Scotsville Boys. That the kind of diversity that I'm allowed to do in the theater, I you know, I feel so lucky to be able to tell different kinds of stories.
Mm, mm. Yeah, well, that's part of what's been, I think, really remarkable about your career is that it hasn't been pigeonholed into one genre or one anything.
Right.
Um, all right, so here we are in this extraordinarily weird moment in time when there isn't any theater, and
Yes.
you and I and our colleagues are all without one another in person, unable to rehearse, unable to perform. What are you doing to keep creative and creating during this unusual, for me, unprecedented period?
Well, it is a rough time because you know, my fear is that we theater folk will be the last ones to go back. You know?
I think you're right.
Phase 50 or something. I
Yeah.
don't think, you know,
Right.
because we have, you know, the audience factor, but also it's singing and dancing and droplets, and you know, so it is very disheartening to know it's going to take a while, but we will be back. I know, and because I know people miss us.
Yes.
I know people miss us singing and dancing and telling stories, and people have to have storytellers, and so we will be back. I know we will be back, but just how that happens and when that happens, I do not know. But yes, I mean, you know, it will take more than a pandemic to stop the creative juices from flowing, no matter what, you know. So
Yes.
I'm still creating. When the world shut down, I was about to do a reading for a new musical, and so we've just the first act, and now we've gone on and finished it, writing it. I meet with the creators on Wednesdays and Fridays, and we keep meeting on Zoom, and so it's going very well. And so hopefully when we get out of this, there'll be a musical there.
Great.
And I'm doing 2 Zoom readings that are coming up, where we just keep getting all the actors on a Zoom and hear it, because hearing it read is very helpful.
Yes.
to keep moving forward. One thing I was about to go up to Williamstown and direct
Yes.
a play called Photograph 51.
Yeah, I was planning to come see that.
Yes, it's a beautiful play, and of course Williamstown closed, and it hasn't closed since 1955 when it opened, you know, so it was very, very sad. But Audible stepped in, and Audible's now going to record all the plays that were going to be in Williamstown this summer. So
that's great.
I've been having meetings for that, and you know, it's a lovely cast with Anna Chomsky and Dan Stevens and David Cornsweats, and you know, I mean, it's a great cast. And so we're preparing for Audible to do that reading of that play. So that's something, and it's wonderful. Audible didn't have to do that, you know, and they stepped in to help the arts, you know. And so yeah, so I'm still working and still very much creating with various teams.
That's great. Hal Prince called you a shiny person. Maybe my favorite acknowledgement ever. And everybody who's ever worked with you talks about your optimism and your spirit and your enthusiasm. Here we are in a arguably dark, stressful time. How do you personally center yourself? How do you find within yourself that optimism?
Well, you know, I'm very lucky that I love the theater, and so it's being optimistic that we'll all get to go back to the theater sometime, and not I keep those creative juices going. And now it's not only in the theater. I'm taking like a Spanish class an hour a day to learn Spanish. And I've learned I couldn't boil an egg before this. I could not do any cooking, and now I'm cooking every day. I'm like a gourmet cook. I find it very creative.
Yes.
You know, I
And
don't like the
therapeutic.
cleanup. I don't like the pots and pans, but I like the creative part of cooking. So, you know, I think it's a very scary time. It's, you know, to be in New York also, you know, to be in the epicenter of
Yes.
it all. You know, I didn't leave my apartment for 70 days, and that was a big lockdown, to not see a human being for 70 days.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of, you got to keep going forward, and you got to keep being creative in whatever way you can, in reading and writing and cooking, and, you know, keep learning. That's the thing in this time. The idea of learning is a big thing to keep you
Yes.
going forward.
Yes. I want to talk for a moment about the Scottsboro Boys, because for a couple of, one is I think it's my favorite of all of the work of yours I've seen and loved. So I think it's 2010 you conceived and directed this extraordinary musical telling of a true story of 9 young Black men arrested in March of, I think, 1931, who were falsely accused of raping 2 white women, indicted less than a week after their arrests. They're convicted, 8 are sentenced to death. And this remarkable story, and the remarkable way in which you told that story, I'm wondering, it's been very present for me amidst all of what's been happening all over the world. I'm wondering, first of all, has that production come to mind for you as it has for me of late?
Well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, AMC is going to put on the archival tape of the Scottsboro Boys, it'll be at the end of July, and they'll have Black leaders in front of it and Black leaders to do Q&A afterwards. And Coleman Domingo is sort of the host of it all, but it's the archival tape from London, from the London company.
Great.
Yes. So, but getting that tape out of the Victoria and Albert Museum when the museum was closed, took quite a thing of many letters and many calls, and because everybody was on furlough, and the whole thing was closed. So that was a good 2 or 3 weeks of trying to get it out. But AMC is going to give a huge donation to Black Lives Matter, and then we'll have donations throughout the evening of running it. But it does resonate today. You know, I mean, even when that woman in Central Park accused that lovely man who was bird watching of harassing her, you know, that's what happened to the Scottsboro Boys.
Right.
You know, Victoria Price just turned to a group of guys who didn't even know each other and said they raped me, and they were scooped up and sent to jail. So you know, and much of the Scottsboro Boys resonates today, you know, very much so. The same story about being falsely imprisoned, and the justice system not being there for them, and no one being there for them. So yeah, it really, really does resonate. And hopefully this evening we'll raise a lot of money for various organizations. And the company that was in London was half American and half British. So a lot of the original folks are in there too.
Great. That's great. That's great. Well, if you're in the audience today and you've not seen the Scottsboro Boys, or if you have, do not miss this. When in July is it going to be, Stro?
Well, right now it's not an exact date, but it'll be the end, towards the end.
Okay. All right. We will watch for it. It is extraordinary.
And that's, you know, Candor and Ebb, my relationship with them, you know, sadly we lost Fred Ebb a while ago, but we got together not knowing what to do, and you know, instead of doing a musical when you're in the fantasy, we decided to do a musical based on a truth, and we started to research the 10 greatest trials in America, and of course the Scottsboro Boys were there. And Candor and Ebb jumped on it right away because they called them the Scottsboro Boys, like they were a vocal group or something. And it was determined for Keanu and Neb to make them seen as individuals, and that every single person mattered. And they write for the underdog. You know, maybe this time I'll get lucky. Maybe this time I'll win. Everything they write about is writing for the underdog, someone who is hopeful that they're going to get out of a situation. So, you know, it was right up their alley. All the different characters that were based on truth, and actually many of the lyrics are based on true transcripts.
Oh wow, I didn't know
from the trials. You know, and a lot of David Thompson's writing is based on the real transcripts of the trials.
Well, my wife and I were at the closing night, which I think was at the Vineyard, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I remember, boy, it brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
I remember that show ending and the combination of the wallop that production was and that it was closing. The audience just sat there and wept. I don't think I've ever been part of anything like that in the theater. It was,
thanks, Sandy.
well, it was extraordinary. I've always been curious about one thing. You are attracted to such a wide variety of stories, to farce, to something as deep as the Scottsboro Boys. It just seems you are attracted to the breadth of what can be dramatic. What is it that attracts you to a story and then inspires you to turn it into a work of art?
Well, it is the story. The story is everything to me, and so I think that's why it's so varied, and finding characters also that have an accessibility. I think that an audience can feel like they are that character, or know that character, and know somebody who is just like that character. So there's kind of shows that are about something that people can connect with. Mm-hmm. That's the greatest thing, actually. And my father was also, besides a great pianist, he told big fish stories. So I still don't know to this day if those stories are true or not. A turkey as big as a Range Rover and stuff like that. But I grew up with all those, hearing stories too, which I think for anybody who loves the theater, it's because someone told them stories when they were younger.
Yes. Do you immediately visualize, as you think of a story, or you're reading one, or someone shares something with you that might become a show, do you immediately see it on stage? Do you see dance steps? Do you?
Well, certainly, musically, yes. I mean, when I hear music, I visualize it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's whether it's classical or an old standard or rock and roll, whatever. So I hear music and it immediately is visual for me. So, if I hadn't become a choreographer, I probably just would have gone crazy. But even today, whatever I hear, music is not like a relaxing entity. I hear music and it all sets and lights and costumes come into my head. So it's very much a part of me to hear a piece of music and tell a story to that piece of music. And also part of what I do also is when you see any show that I've done, the music matches up with the choreography. So yes. I work with an arranger. So if that dancer jumps in the air, the whole orchestra jumps in the air. So very much part of working on the orchestrations and the time signatures and putting a whole score together with the composer and the arranger is very much a part of what I do too, to support the visual. And I have to say that came from watching, when I was a kid, watching Astaire movies.
Really?
I would watch Astaire and I would see that his dance matched exactly what the orchestration was doing, or the orchestration matched exactly what his dance was doing. And I could tell that at a very young age. And so it supports the visual, it supports the choreography. For example, in like Crazy for You, if you take the song "Shall We Dance," if I want Bobby and Polly to chase one another, I'll play it in a fast 2. If I want them to be coy and shy with one another, I'll play it like a soft shoe. And if I want them to fall in love, I'll play it in 3/4 time. So the time signature, the music can also help tell the story without the audience actually even quite knowing that.
Yes.
But it helps develop the story just by manipulating the time signature with the melody.
Do you start with the visual and then work into the music, or vice versa, or both?
Probably, I do a lot of research on whatever show I'm doing. I immerse myself in research, and that helps me to collaborate with my set designer and costume designer. And then I work on the music first, because every wonderful composer gives you great 32 bars of a song and a song and a song. And now it's making it go that, you know, this has got to, when this set comes on, you got to modulate and bring on that set, you know, and the music's got to go like that. So I work it out musically in my head first, and then I start doing choreography. And as far as I have to say, when I do a show, I pretty much have it all worked out, but I don't really share that with the actors. I want the actors to feel free and feel like they're contributing. So it's almost like creating a net for everybody to fall into. You know, because I want an actor to feel like they own it. So I'm there prepared, and with suggestions on, I know this would work over here, but if someone wants to go that way, I need to let them go that way. And either, you know, they inspire me, or I'll pull them back, one or the other. But I am inspired by actors. So doing your homework and then being inspired by the performer in front of you, I think gets the best result.
Yeah, well, actors love working with you. I know dancers love working with you, but actors love working with you. And that, in my experience, isn't always the case, that actors love working with a director who's principally, or whose origins are as a choreographer. But the actors I know never feel imposed on by you, never feel anything other than collaboration and trust and empowerment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But I do love actors and I love performers. I find them extraordinary creatures that they can do what they do. You know, the ones that can do it all, you know, that sing, dance, funny, act, dramatic, you know, those people, I can't even believe they exist sometimes.
Yes.
I feel privileged to be around them.
I understand. Your current projects are all completely original new work, but you've also been involved in the creation of musicals from other material. The Producers obviously was a movie that had a song or two, but certainly wasn't a musical. Young Frankenstein, I don't think, had any songs, but you've done a lot of creating a musical version of films or plays. Are there works that you have your eye on that you've thought, God, I'd really love to make a musical out of that?
Well, there are some that I'm working on right now, actually.
Can you say, or?
Yeah, sure. We're working on, actually, I'm back with Candor Neb again. And we're working on New York, New York, which was not a particularly good screenplay. Right. It wasn't a great screenplay, I'll say that. Right. But it is the same essence of New York, and it's a female singer and a musician. But this is more about New York as a character, and New York as a melting pot of people. So we are working on that now. And then I'm working on another piece called Do You Know Who I Am, which is a very new piece that is written by Diane Warren, wonderful composer. And it has a Me Too-ish theme to it, but very, very contemporary. Yeah, so but I think, you know, I love doing new work all the time. And so I don't reach out to do a revival. Yeah. You know, although, you know, I've been very lucky that I did 3 big revivals. I felt very lucky to do the big production of Music Man, Showboat with Hal Prince, and Oklahoma, the big Oklahoma with Trevor Nunn. And, you know, and they were the 3 big classic American musicals that,
Yeah.
taught
And
me a lot to work on,
yeah, three of the
but
most celebrated directors in the history of the theater, too.
yeah, yeah. So it's like now since the last one I think was Oklahoma, since then I've made it a decision not to do any more revivals. I mean, that might change after this pandemic, but since then I've just wanted to work on,
Yeah.
new works.
How many projects in various stages of preparation do you have at one time?
They can be, right now there would be 5,
Is that
because
a normal number for
yeah,
you?
it was usually like 3, but since the shutdown, I was like, oh, let's try this, I'll call you on Zoom. But the thing is, you just never know if a show is going to get produced. So you work on it, and hopefully you get a producer. And then that one show will go forward like a horse race, but you keep working on it and working on it. Last year I did a show with Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty called Marie, which is at Seattle Fifth Avenue Theater, and we're hoping that that comes in to Broadway. We were hoping that it was going to come in, of course, this fall, but there you go. But that's all ready with sets and costumes, all sitting in a truck, but Marie is based on Degas' Little Dancer at 14. It's based on that very famous sculpture. And so it's very much the world of turn of the century Paris, and about a young girl it's about this girl, and who is a real historical figure. There isn't a lot of written about her, but it was enough to write a musical. So, so it's, and there are very many moments of Degas' paintings in it, and about how she wanted to be the most famous dancer in the world, and inadvertently she became the most famous dancer in the world because of that sculpture. But it's a wonderful piece that Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty have written an incredible score to. So we're waiting to come in on that. But meanwhile, we still tweak it, even though from Seattle, you never kind of stop working, working on your musical. You keep going.
Wonderful. Wow. All right. Well, we have something to look forward to there, too.
Yes.
Are there either composers or playwrights emerging who you're excited about, who you foresee great things for, that you think we ought to know about?
Yeah, there's a young girl named Selena Fillinger who wrote a play called POTUS, which is about 7 women trying to get the president through the day. You never see him, though. It's just the 7 women. And it's very funny. She's a wonderful, wonderful writer. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more of her stuff, and hopefully mounting some of her work if I can. And just Photograph 51, Anna Ziegler, she's a wonderful playwright. I'm hoping to continue to do more of her plays. And well, yes, there's lots of, musically, there's the fellas who wrote Dear Evan Hansen, I think, are extremely talented, those guys. And, there's so many wonderful artists that are coming up right now that I hope to get a chance to work with.
Great. All right, we had someone send in a question. I'm gonna just verbatim read for you. So it goes this way. I saw the last performance of Little Dancer at the Kennedy Center in November 2014.
Yeah.
And I've been hoping ever since to see it performed on Broadway so that family and friends could share it with me. Would you give an update on what's been happening with that since then? I've read online it's been evolving. What expectation do you have that it will ever appear on Broadway?
Well, that is actually the show called Marie. We changed the name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we opened at the Kennedy Center with the name Little Dancer, but then we tweaked it, and Lynn and Stephen wrote some new songs, and then we went out of town again in Seattle and had a fantastic run there, and sold out run. And so now we're ready. All
right, well, that lady has a chance of having her
Now
dream
she has
come
a
true.
chance, so hopefully we can see it after this pandemic is over.
That's great. Now, you made the transition from choreographer to director, as many choreographers hope to and don't don't make that leap. What was the most challenging part of that transition for you?
Well, you know, the very first show that I directed on Broadway was The Music Man. It was a huge,
Right.
and I have to say that particular producer, Michael David, to give a woman a chance to direct and a woman a chance to direct and choreograph is a big deal. And I always am grateful to him. He saw something in me that he thought I could do that. And then I created Contact at Lincoln Center, which I directed and choreographed. But I think because I chose to do things musically and with music and dance to direct, it seemed quite natural. You know, it seemed, because even as a choreographer for the theater, you are a storyteller and you have to be on the same page as your director if you're just choreographing. So everybody's on the same page, and different from if you're working in the ballet world or working in the modern world where it's more abstract. You know, you have got to always push the plot forward. You always have to be in your story, choreographically, musically, and in every way. So it was actually quite a natural step for me to move in that direction. And I had already, you know, directed smaller things, but that was a big thing to be allowed to happen. And, you know, and then for Mel Brooks to allow me to direct and choreograph The Producers and Young Frankenstein, you know, I was lucky that the directors that I worked with were Trevor Nunn, Nick Heitner, Mike Ockrent, Hal Prince. You know, so when I came to New York, those were the directors that I got to work with and got to learn from and still, you know, stand on the shoulders of, you know. So, you know, not only was I choreographing for these greats, but I was observing as I was working too. So, you know, I was very, very fortunate.
Yes. Well, let me ask you something. You spoke a moment ago about saying at the moment you first got that opportunity, it was rare for a woman. And I'm curious, do you still find that it's more difficult than it might be if you were a guy? Do you run up against that even today?
Yeah, yes, I think, when I started, it was in a very male-dominated field, and it still is male-dominated, although in the last, I would say, because when I started, that was over 30 years ago, over 30 years ago. But now, I would say in the last 10 years or 12 years, you know, there are more women directing, which is wonderful, but it was difficult. And I remember, you know, making sure I had a black hat on and a jacket and, you know, I was got to pull a show off, you know. So, you know, now today, I think a woman should dress any way she wants and look like what she wants. But I certainly took on a different manner when I went into, for these jobs, you know. But today, it is still, you do feel marginalized sometimes, just certainly financially. And, but you know, listen, if
is remuneration in Broadway different for a woman director choreographer than it might be for a man even today?
Yes.
Oh, that's just horrible. God.
I know. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, but all you can do is sort of believe in your work and believe in what you do and what's inside you and keep going forward. It's it is better though. It's much better.
Yeah. Wow. Would you say something? I know we're shifting from topic to topic here. If I was a better interviewer, we'd probably much more organized. But
I think you're doing great. So
I haven't had the chance to sit down with you for quite a while and never had the chance to ask all these questions. So I'm like a kid in the candy store here. How do you one of your, at least from my perspective, one of the signatures of some of your work are big numbers that are long in duration, but change 50 million times in one musical number. How do you set out to construct a big number like that? Do they start off, this is going to be a 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 minute number that's going to have 15 changes in it? Do you start or does it just emerge that way?
I think it just develops as you tell the story, like for example, in the producers, Leo Bloom is an accountant at his desk, and he's very bored, and he dreams of becoming a Broadway producer. And what does that mean to become a Broadway producer? So, the wonderful Robin Wagner set designer did a set that had file cabinets here. And I thought, well, it'd be great if all of a sudden the girls came out of the file cabinets, because Leo Bloom imagines that Broadway producers are surrounded by beautiful girls all the time. So they pour out, and then the set blows off, and someone gives Leo Bloom a hat and a cane, and he gets to do a big dance, and then he gets to drink champagne, and and then he sees his name up in lights. So it's all about storytelling about what he thinks a Broadway producer is. And then, but it comes back down, all the way back down to where it started again at the very end, where he is now a lowly accountant again, singing the song Unhappy. But it's always staying in the story, and then seeing what you can imagine.
Yeah.
Because I have to say, the thing you have to do also as a choreographer and as a director, you have to become those characters. For example, Leo Bloom would dance very differently than Max Bialystock.
Yes, and does.
So Max Bialystock is a little more, Art Carney-ish or whatever, and old vaudeville steps. Whereas Leo Bloom would want to be as smooth or shy, So when you're choreographing or when you're developing numbers, you have to become those characters in order to get the best result, because it has to be believable to an audience and that someone launches into song and dance. It doesn't have to be true, but it has to be believable that they would launch into song and dance. Yeah.
Who are your heroes in the theater, or outside of the theater too?
Well, it's Hal Prince. Sadly, we lost Hal, but he was a big hero because he took chances, boy, doing a musical Sweeney Todd, and just Kiss the Spider Woman, and he just really took big chances, and even Cabaret at the time was taking a big chance. I think certainly Hal. As far as inspiration, though, I think Jerome Robbins was someone I really looked to as someone who, when he would choreograph or direct, people stayed in those characters. Even if they were sailors flying through the airs, they were still sailors when they landed down on the ground. He made sure that everybody danced the way that character would dance in real life. So Robbins was a big influence.
Yeah, on every one of us who ever saw anything he did.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we're coming to the end of this portion. Is there a question that you wished you'd been asked?
No, I think you asked great questions. No. It was all wonderful.
All right. Well, I have one question, which, what would it take to persuade you to direct a play at the Resident Ensemble Players in Delaware, to come home, so to speak, and work with our company?
I would love that.
Well, I know you have your projects planned out like years in advance, but I just want to put in a bid. Anytime, any play, anything, our company would just love, and audiences in Delaware would love to have you back.
Well, I would love to come back. I have very fond memories of the University of Delaware and all things Delaware. So I would love to come back. So thank you for that. Well, we'll talk about that and try to work that out, because that would be a treat for me. That'd be a
It's-
real treat.
All right, I'm gonna hold you to that. Thank you so much for having made yourself available for this. It's just a
Absolutely.
huge treat for all of us. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Sandy. It was lovely to see you. Best wishes to everyone. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the Great White Way someday, hopefully. Bye-bye.